everybody, it's Lee. Got a great episode today. We're talking about JB Anderson. You probably don't know who that is because this is a crossover episode. We're talking to soccer coaches, soccer dads today, because we wanted to see the similarities and maybe the differences between two different sports. And what ended up happening was an amazing conversation. Obviously, a lot of similarities between youth soccer and youth hockey, but also the ability to kind of learn from the different sports and learn from each other and see where we stand. It's something I haven't really experienced before, at least in not a podcasting format. So we think you're really, really going to enjoy it. So make sure to listen on. Also, want to let you know and remind you, if you're enjoying these episodes, it really helps us if you give us a 5-star rating on wherever you're listening, or share it with your friends, put it in your team snaps, share it with your families. We're trying to grow and build a community here, and you have been absolutely integral and awesome with doing that. Also, check out our Facebook page, Our Kids Play Hockey, where the conversation kind of continues after the episode. And with that said, if you're looking for any kind of great gift ideas, we're kind of getting towards the end of the season. You can go over to ourkidsplayhockey.com and see some of the deals that we have on that page for you, your family, your coaches, and everybody in between. But without further ado, enjoy this crossover episode with JB Anderson of the Soccer Dad Pod. I almost messed that up, here on Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by Christy Casciano-Burns and Mike Bonelli. And today, we're going to engage you and ourselves with something a little different. This is going to be our first ever crossover episode, as we've invited a parent and a podcast host that has braved the elements of another youth sport. And we thought it would be a great show idea to compare and contrast our crazy sport lifestyle to see if ours is as insane as we think, and soccer seemed like the perfect starting point. So with that said, we're going to welcome in JB Anderson of the Soccer Dad Pod, who's with us today. In addition to being a podcast host, he is the owner of Gaslight Studios, STL. He was a state champion in Illinois with Granite City High, winner of the Holland Cup International Tournament, an NAIA Collegiate player, and he spent 15 years as a youth club coach. And we're not just bringing in some schmo here. We brought in someone who's really been around his sport. Most importantly, he's a proud parent, like the three of us and most of you listening, of 3 kids: Keller, who's 17, Beckett, who's 14, and Maxwell, who is 9, all whom play competitive soccer. So, JB, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate the intro. And just out of the gate, I am a schmo, according to my wife and my peers. So we're good there. But I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
We should rename the show just Schmoes Talking Sports. That's another great.
What I mean? Advertisers would love that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it is, right? When I say it, right? It's just every living room conversation that ever existed.
Lee, when you have teenagers, you are a schmo.
Anyway. Yeah. I've got a few years to go before my kids reach that, but that's going to go by real quick, and we all know that. So, listen, before we jump into the two sports, I want to talk about the Soccer Dad Pod. You started that last year. What spurred you to do that? Because we know why we did this show. So I'm curious if it's similar.
Well, having lived the majority of my life at soccer fields in the last 15 years or so on the sideline, along with a whole armada of other parents that range from ex-players to had never seen the game before, we spend countless hours discussing why our little Johnnies are doing what they're doing, or playing time, or coaches' decisions, and a million other topics. And coming from the studio production world, where our studio, we do execute and produce a lot of other content, from pop music to podcasts. I jokingly was like, well, this is ridiculous for us not to record this. I said, if nothing else, we could at least get a beer sponsor. And we could justify to our wives why we're spending this much time talking about soccer and drinking beer. And it just kind of took on a life of its own, because St. Louis is a soccer mecca, nationally speaking. So it was very easy for us to strike a nerve with a lot of other parents, ex-players. And the content was relevant because we kind of tend to navigate through historical references up to the current. And it's just working because the timing is right. So
sounds very familiar, all of that.
Right.
Except the beer. How come we don't have beer on our show?
I mean, Mike, I don't know what you're partaking in, but no, yeah. One thing I'll say too, you said St. Louis is a soccer town. We also know it's a hockey town. So this is a great, we talked about in the pre-show. This is actually a really great kind of mixture of the two things together today.
Yeah.
So like, as you said, you played soccer, as I said in the intro, most of your life. First question I got to ask, right, is how are youth soccer leagues organized? In hockey, we have school teams and club teams. I'm just curious, just to kind of make, set the setting here for the audience. Is it similar in regards to how youth soccer operates?
Yeah, it's actually very similar. My high school, we had a club team. It was affiliated with the city. And then obviously over on the Missouri side, because here in St. Louis, we have the Illinois side, obviously a stone's throw away, a little bit different than the Missouri side. Missouri side, the high schools are private high schools in particular do carry their own hockey teams. Youth soccer here it's a Goliath, and it runs the gamut of your CYC, kind of the Catholic leagues that are kind of rec based. And then you have the club environment, which has all kind of different tiers of scale and quality of the staff, etc. And now we're entering into this realm with the growth of MLS, the growth of academies, which is really the one percenters, where that is the kids are scouted, they have tryouts, they make these teams, and then the teams, for all intents and purposes, owns these kids. So you have the kind of the fun, pay your team dues at the CYC level. You have the pay to play, which is the majority of players in the middle, which is the club level. And then you have the more European model of, hey, this is free, but your kid's ours for the one percenters.
Right.
So that's kind of the lay of the land right now. And it just continues to grow, especially with the popularity, not only of the game in general, but the growth of MLS within these MLS cities.
Yeah, it does continue. And the reason why I'm wearing this Syracuse University alum shirt, as you took nationals, baby.
They beat IU, which Indiana is it's a pipeline for St. Louis players. In fact, there were 6 players on the IU team that came from the club that all of our kids play at, 6 on one team. So
wow,
there's a relationship there.
Yeah, so I do have bragging rights here.
No, that's all right. I mean, we still you have about 9 more to catch up to.
So that's there it is. There it is. That's the sauce.
But what we saw is because they took national, and parents are watching the World Cup. There's just an explosion again of interest in soccer. So maybe just a heads up for parents who want to jump into it. What are they getting into?
Well, I think that it's a simple game. I mean, there's a reason why nations like South American nations, Central American nations like Brazil have flourished in spite of historically being a third world country until they weren't. It's cheap. It's cheap to get into. And here in America in particular, we have a lot of theories from our show in particular. One that we joke about that I think is very, very real is the FIFA, is the Xbox effect.
Right.
So many of our children, whether they are hockey players or football players or whatever, FIFA as a sporting game is the most popular e-sport game in the world.
Yeah.
So these kids
by
are
a mile,
playing,
by the way, like it's by miles. It's not even close. Yeah.
So you take that and then you compound that with social media relevance of some of these superstars like Messi, like Ronaldo, that really kind of garner a ton of pop culture influence, apply to these kids, their wealth, their cars, their popularity, and it's just a pop culture syndrome, and kids are flowing into it. So I think that's a big part of it. For parents that are wondering, what am I really getting into? You're getting into nothing different than the same youth sports that we've all been into. It's just the kind of America has never dominated. So this is a sport that from a regional, national, global standpoint, we're not used to because we don't win it every year, as opposed to dream teams and, USA and Canada fighting for hockey golds and things like that. Soccer's different. We are much further down the ladder.
Yeah, I think that's. Oh, sorry, Lee. Go ahead.
No, you please, Mike.
I'm just saying
every opportunity for you to talk, I want to take.
It just it just really it really falls under the umbrella of the similarities, though, of when we talk about, when you look at the U.S. soccer market, it is unbelievably big. I mean,
Right.
hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids. Every single kid plays soccer, basically. Like when you're growing up. And I think that's a model that the U.S. is trying to, and actually U.S. and North America teams, try to follow with hockey, is what can get more kids into the sport. And I think, the soccer side is a little easier, right? Because it's just access. It's can I get access? Yes, there's a field over there. Everyone has a field in their town. Everyone has a soccer. Everybody can have a soccer ball, and you can play. So I think it is. I mean, I think from a sports fan, it's certainly disheartening for somebody like me to watch soccer not flourish and dominate the world, because the fact that they have the same issues as hockey is that we're not training our kids developmentally well enough in a place where they have free play and understand the game better and can kind of find the right kids. Because honestly, at the academy level, we're pricing it out just like we are in hockey, right? So a lot of these kids that you would normally see flourish in these other countries that have zero money. I mean, there's no infrastructure whatsoever until you get maybe to an academy level.
Correct.
But the infrastructure, and I think we're both, I think that North American dad and mom, that parent is the same, whether you're a soccer, lacrosse, hockey. It's okay. Well, why are the model is access and play, and we eliminate access and play. And then we wonder why our teams aren't the best in the world.
Yeah. And it's funny because we hear all the time the detractors or the naysayers to the game of soccer as far as why is the U.S. team not flourishing or being more dominant on a global scale, given our money and our population and all these other things. And then the argument comes at us like, well, you don't even really have the best athletes, which, I personally find it laughable because, the World Cup just proved with the winner and Messi being on the field. Messi plays no other professional sport in the world, given his physicality, given his quote athleticism. It's just not going to happen. He's a soccer player that was brought up the proper way. In the United States, one of the biggest problems we have, in my opinion, is scale. We have so many communities, so many regions that are ethnically diverse. And what comes along with that, especially in soccer, is style differences. There's a difference in play between South Americans and Germans versus Russians to South Koreans, just in the way they play. So you take, quote, our best 30 in a national pool, you might have 7 to 8 Hispanic kids. You might have a few kind of European influence players. You might have just some killer athletes from Texas. And then they all get together and there's a reason why they don't gel. So it's something that other sports don't have as much variation as soccer does. You guys know better than anybody, hockey tends to be somewhat stylistically the same. Soccer, though, it's completely different from, region to region to region.
Oh, I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I've learned a lot here.
I was going to say too, in hockey, there is some, like you said, you alluded to, like when you look at the Scandinavian style versus the Russian style versus the European style versus the American style. I mean, but it is starting to even out a bit. I remember, Mike, you'll like this one too. In the 90s, our style in North America was extremely physical. I mean, actually going back before the 90s, you can go from the 70s really through the 90s. And European teams would come in, or even Russian teams, and that was not their style. So sometimes it worked, most of the time it didn't on the North American end to play the hockey game that way. But it's a great point you're bringing up, that different cultures perceive and do sports a different way. And really the key as coaches, just kind of go in that direction for a minute, is to try and learn from everybody, right? Mike and I had the privilege a few years ago now to interview Lou Vero. And Lou Vero, who's the godfather of USA hockey, basically, JB, talked about conversing with the leaders of the Soviet Union hockey people at the time, just to learn from each other. And they were friends, right? Yeah. Even the countries were not. So, the ability to expand your mind, I'm not sure the USA in North America does that, or has I'm not trying to sound insulting here. It's just the capacity to do that's not the same. The other thing I wanted to say too is, I had the privilege to live in Europe for several years, and really witness the European model for sport, which is completely different. It's just, basically it's not capitalistic is what I would say. And I'm not against capitalism. It's just the way you grow up in the system that you're with these kids, the development's there. There's a lot of pride in playing for your home club, if you will, before you graduate to bigger and bigger clubs. Mike, Christy and I discussed that it's something that is unfortunately in many regions in this country lacking, right? And it's too much pay to play, too much pay for private lessons, and not enough camaraderie when it comes to that. So I wonder if North American soccer suffers from that as well. And again, hockey does too. This is not like I'm not shooting soccer down. This is every sport. Anyway, do you want to comment on that? Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No. I think you're spot on. I mean, we just personally got back from holiday in Europe for a couple of weeks. And we really kind of, our family, we tend to embed in the neighborhood, and my kids, all being soccer fanatics, seek out the local kids or the local futsal court or whatever,
right.
And as whether a couple of years ago we were in Costa Rica, did the same thing. This year we were in Spain and South France. And, what you notice is the youth aspect of the game is completely community based.
Right. I love
whereas
that.
in our worlds, you load up the Yukon, drive 50 miles because that's the best quote team or training facility or whatever. We are so car dependent in general that it really takes away the community aspect that so many of these European, neighborhoods that grow into the Spanish national teams and the German national teams, because they all are loyal and they play the same style too.
Right.
But most importantly, for the most part, it's free. It's $1 train ticket for the kid to leave his apartment to go to the fields 15 minutes away. So it's really kind of disheartening when you look at our St. Louis is a great example. Within the inner city, we have an untapped talent pool, athlete pool in these kids that simply don't have. They're economically challenged, they're socially challenged, but if they had the means to just engage with the sport, sky's the limit.
Sports saves lives, man.
Yeah.
JP, would you agree or disagree though that this is all self-imposed? I mean, you have there's like, I mean, how many fields are in like within 50 walking distance of your house? There's probably 16 fields. Like really realistically, we impose this on ourselves. Like we allow maybe it's the monetization, maybe whatever it is, but the fact that we think that the other 7 kids we're going to play 60 miles away are any worse or better than the kids that live in our same town is so crazy to me. Like when I see, and I've seen it in soccer, growing up as a dad soccer coach and being involved with all in these soccer programs and kind of being, laying on the side and being like, okay, well, this seems pretty simple to me. I mean, it's basically hockey. It's all the same fundamentals, the same ideas. It's the same, we're trying to keep the ball from going in that net and trying to score on that net.
Right.
So all these things are the same, but why do you need to take these 7-8-year-olds and go, like I'm in Westchester County, New York. Like, why do you have to go to Randall's Island, which is an hour and 45 minutes away and 3 bridges and a toll to go find the same kids? Like it just still to this day, and for soccer even more, because soccer, there's so many more kids. Like, I mean, let's face it, anyone can play. I mean, maybe not at an elite level, but anyone can play soccer. Anyone.
Yeah. No, I think one of the biggest problems, to your point, is not so much the institutions or the clubs, because again, like Lee mentioned earlier, they're out to make money. I mean, that's their job. Whether they're a 501c3 or they're a for-profit club, they're trying to make money. I feel, having grown up in the system, and I grew up in a family that didn't have the means. So all of my kind of steps in the process it was all grinded out, because we had to find what could they afford to get me to, and, to keep up with where I was excelling. And watching peers that were lesser players, but financially more stable, being able to easily keep up, it offended me in hindsight. And I think that big part of the problem is really the parent ego. The parent ego over these decades is really what is feeding this kind of disparity. And it's what's created the wall, really. It is a money system. And if your kid has the X's and O's, maybe the aggression or a little bit of hand-eye or speed or whatever it is, you put money behind it, they're going to get better. Now, are they going to be the next coming of, a Pele, American Pele? No, because those players just have it, and you can't buy it. You can't find it. It just happens. So I blame parents.
Yeah, JB, I want to note one note on that, because we talk about this a lot on the show, and this is true of any sport. That look, if you're in a position financially to support your kids, that is fantastic. I wouldn't. Right. We're not being negative about that, and vice versa. If you're not, that sucks. It does. But the truth is this about any youth athlete, and JB just said it. You talked about it. They have to love and want this so bad, no matter what financial situation you're in, for success to be even possible. It's not even guaranteed at that point, right? But every great athlete I've ever met, every professional athlete, generally had the strongest of desires to succeed at the craft of the sport. And unfortunately, you can't buy that. Actually, I shouldn't say unfortunately, you just can't buy that, period, right? It's there or it's not. And sometimes it comes later, sometimes it comes earlier. Again, my 9-year-old is really loving the game, right? And really falling in love with it. I'm watching it in real time, and it's fantastic for me, but I never pushed him, and it's coming naturally. I think that's so important across sports. And this is where, again, parents, and I'm a parent, Chrissy's a parent, we're all parents here. I've had to stop myself so many times. It happened yesterday. I was going to say something after the game, and I said, nope, we did a whole show on this. Don't say anything. You know what I mean? So
good job. What would
you it's difficult. I also was wondering if we could talk about specializing in the sport, because I do see a tendency for friends whose kids play soccer. That's all they do. They don't do any other sport. But some of the kids who, cross over and played hockey, I could always tell the soccer player on the ice arena, because they would have these really cool moves. They might kick the puck, or they might, kind of spin around a little faster. Their coordination was just above and beyond the kid who specialized in hockey. I really hope that parents listen to you, because I'm sure you're on board with this about not specializing in a sport when they're so young. There's a tendency to do that because you want your kid to be the best soccer player out there. But don't you also find the benefits when they get the break from soccer and they try something else and pick up some other skills, which can translate on the soccer field and on the ice?
No, I totally agree. And I think that I when it comes to those kids that are interested, willing, and capable of playing both sports, I view the pool of players as a bell curve, in so much there are those that can't, and then there's the majority that can, and they're going to find a way. But then at the other end of it, you have those kids that are so far advanced within said sport, be it soccer or hockey, that unfortunately, the reality of the situation is, in today's environment, with MLS clubs in particular on the soccer side and some of the other academies, the showcases in these national tournaments that they're participating in, the scout effect is becoming real at U14, U15, U16. So when you think about the potential of dual sport risk to the physical body, to the time, or frankly the coach ego, in so much as not having the kid all the time, it's real for those. But to your point, the other 98% of kids that can, absolutely go play other sports, expand, because all of us know, as being somewhat adults, for lack of a better term, it is about the Rolodex. It's about your relationships, and get into other circles, because as they progress, you're going to want to know that guy or girl, or for your next house purchase or whatever it might be, and from a sporting standpoint, it just teaches you how to play with the team, teaches you how to adapt. because those kids that are the 1%ers, you see the stress that's put on them.
Yeah.
You know, Lee, you hit it on the head with your son, you know, showing the enthusiasm and wanting to excel. You know, we're going through that with my 14-year-old. You know, for the last 2 years since COVID, 5:30 in the morning, his alarm goes off on his own. He's out, he's working out, you
That's
know,
awesome.
and he's coming back and he's eating the smoothies and all this stuff. And we don't say a word. Like we realize that we're past that point of being the cheerleaders. Now we just have to be the facilitators.
Right.
Like, what do you need in the fridge?
Well, it's his dream, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's the other thing too, with parents, you know, I don't kind of say this, but it's like, whose dream are we pursuing here? Is it your dream or is it their dream? Because if it's not theirs, it ain't going to happen. Or worse, in that situation, it does happen. You know, and then you hit a burnout point. But yeah, first off, I think that's awesome that your 14-year-old's doing that. And look, here's the thing too, parents, there's other 14-year-olds. You might have one that isn't doing that. And guess what? That's okay too.
And that's fine too.
Yeah, there's so much going on in the 14-year-old mind or any age mind. And we always talk about meeting your kids where they're at. But I'll tell you right now, I think the studies show, Christy, Mike, you can back me up on this, that if you push them too hard, they are just naturally going to rebel and do the opposite of what you said. Right? So I
learned that lesson.
Yeah. I think all parents in the Northeast learn that lesson. It just the mentality.
Yeah, but I also think that most of us think that our kid is the 1%er.
Yes.
Like, well, no, that's my kid. Those kids, they should have fun, and that kid really should do that. But that's not my kid. My kid is that kid. And I'm like, well, somebody's got to say, no, your kid is not that kid. Like that's just not your kid. But it's so hard because then you get back to the model where you're like, well, I can make your kid that kid for a little bit of, you know, for a couple of, you know, for a little bit of money and a lot of training. I think I can help make that kid.
Mike, you just gave me a horrendous show idea. We should do the Shark Tank of youth sports.
Oh my God.
These parents come in with their kids and you just go, kids. I'm out. Yeah.
Well, I got to have at least 75% equity in this thing.
That's right. In perpetuity. Yeah.
Well, my feeling, just bring me your 23andMe and I'll tell you if, you know, I'll give you a pretty good ballpark of where you're going to be. So I think it's just a matter of.
You got to be so careful because those talent scouts are constantly casting that reel and trying to get one on the line.
Well, I laugh about the scouting piece. And I just wanted to bring it up real quick is that I could probably we could probably do a couple of shows on the amount of money spent to get a scout to look at you, where you end up going to a school that actually costs less than what you spent to get there. Like, it's like, well, what the hell was the point of that? Like you wanted to go, I don't want to name any schools, but you know, if you're a coach with a 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid, you know where they fit in. If you're a real developer, if you're really a talent acquisition expert, you could say, here's where you're going to be. Here's your window. Now, are you going to spend $180,000 to get to a school that would have cost you $12,000 to go to? Like, what's the, you know, oh, well, I got a scholarship. Who cares? You spent $150,000 to get the $800 scholarship for books.
You paid for the scholarship.
So it's just so funny. But but I got the scholarship. Yeah, I get it. And I think that's where, you know, JB's talking about the parent ego. Is like, we all want to say, like, I can't tell you how many kids, you know, I have a teenager as well, and how many of his, you know, the parents of these kids talk about the scholarships they're getting for prep school. And I'm like, so you had $10,000 on a $45,000 a year fee. Everyone got that. Nobody pays the $45,000. Like, don't you understand that nobody is paying that?
Nobody pays that. Yeah.
If I can, real quick, guys, and JB, I just want to set this up as a question a bit too, because I think this is across all youth sports. You know, that we focus, and again, look, I kind of have to preface this. I'm not in the teenage, late teen era where my kids are looking at school yet. So I don't want to presume that I know how I'm going to act at that time. But what I do feel like I know is that we're identifying the wrong things to identify through, right? Of scholarships and prep schools and colleges, while they're very important accomplishments in someone's life. You know, people can sometimes roll their eyes when I say this. Is this kid going to be a good person? For their lives? Are they going to help out in society? You know, we talk about the mental fitness aspect of this. You know, I've been getting a lot of calls, and I'm kind of shocked about this, from players and their parents that want to get their kid to the next level. And I said, my approach has nothing to do with that. My approach is to make your kid a good person, which they probably already are, but to enhance who they are as a human which will then in turn make them a better player. And it always works. And here, if that's not your style, that's fine. I'm not for you. That's okay. I'm not judging anybody. But we're so focused on these milestones that have been created in society and is your kid mentally stable? Is your kid, are they a good teammate? Are they a good person? That's the rub, man.
I agree with you because, all of us that have competed and or coached at those high levels from a youth academy, pro, semi-pro standpoint, even in those environments, that mental acuity, that good character player, that good character teammate, the one that, you could trust kind of with empathy, that would engage you, that wasn't a cyborg. Those were the best teammates.
Right.
Those were the best players on the field. You gravitate towards them because there is that kind of emotional response, because at the end of the day, it's a game that you either love or you don't love. And if you do love it, it's way more fun to play it with a good attitude with people that are just, good dudes, and it's funny going back to what you mentioned earlier, talking about parents just misevaluating their kids. What I did 3 years ago when I had a team that was doing well, they were not expected to do well. They were flourishing within their groups. And of course, when that started to happen, everybody want to talk about playing time and why little Johnny is or isn't. And so I just challenged them all. And what I did is I passed around one of those balls and strikes, little clickers, right? Because we all have VO, we have all the film on every game, etc. I'm like, look, simple challenge. Just go home, watch this. Every time your kid touches the ball and he doesn't turn it over, that's a strike. But if he does turn it over, it goes out of bounds or to the other player, whatever, that's a ball. Add it up. And if they don't have at least 60 to 70% possession strikes, well, then there's the answer to your question as to why they're not playing. And sure enough, man, they were clicking through that clicker and like, these numbers are 30%, 35%, and then they're paying attention to the kids that were playing and they were at 70, 75, 80. And sometimes it's just the simple reality. Parents aren't coached as to what is really going on the field 9 times out of 10.
And they're only watching their kid. That's
of course.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's what I do. I only watch my kids. I'm not watching the other kids.
Well, it's we joke that it's the baseball effect. If you bat 280, 290, that's pretty good. 300's better. But if you're a 30% pass completion rate in soccer, you're not good. So it's like, you look at those kind of things, and sometimes we just try to dumb it down and be like, look, this is what's going on. And then you look at the stats at the highest level. Go to your kid's FIFA game. And when you see Manchester City with a 94% pass ratio completion, that's good. That's why they're number one in the world. And so, half the time it's lost in translation. And then you compound the emotional connectivity they have with their own. And it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring that because, I can't tell if we're talking about hockey or soccer anymore, which is good. That just shows you how much these two things blend together. But yeah, and then we talk about the teaching of accountability through those situations. So what I want to follow up is, okay, let's say they did that exercise. I'm going to kind of transition to see if soccer parents are as crazy as hockey parents here, because it seems like every week we have a new viral video. And our belief is that, 90% of parents are probably pretty good. It's just we're seeing the extremes. But you gave them the ball in the strike clicker. Obviously, you're a coach. I'm sure, as you said, what you asked them to do came true, right? They saw it. Then what was the reaction? Was there a, what, I'm sorry, you're right, we're going to work on this? Or was there another excuse? Or how did they play out after that?
I would, most just simply became quiet. And we're more aware of the why,
which is great. Yeah.
So that we kept it super simple. Like, the goal of our team, if we're not possessing the ball, then we can't move up the field and we can't score goals, and if we score more than them, then we win. Right. It's just really kind of dumbing it down. The few that really questioned and engaged and were like, okay, now what? Then I felt the onus was on me to kind of educate them and give them a compare and contrast as to why we do what we do and things they can work on. For example, in most youth soccer environments at any level, when you watch a pregame, what you always see a line of kids standing up by the circle and some wannabe dad coach standing by the box, and they play the ball and they roll it off and then they kick it. And you have 18, taking a shot at goal. So their warm up is literally just a shooting drill in which you only have one kid at a time touching the ball. And of the 18 kids, there's only going to be 2 or 3 during a game that are actually going to get an opportunity to shoot. Whereas we don't do that. We put them in small groups, just play keep away, because everybody in a game plays keep away. So it's those little things that when parents see that and understand why and how it translates to the game, that's what we focused on.
Right.
So, yeah.
Mike, it's like when our young players deke the goalie out in warmups and make
just,
5.
It's just go. So when you're listening to this podcast, go back to Greg Revac, listen to his pregame warm-up spiel. And then it's the exact same thing, right? It's why do we warm up? Why do we warm up in a situation that doesn't replicate the game at all? And then we wonder why the kids aren't ready for the game. Right. Like, I don't understand why you're not running. Well, I haven't even run yet, coach. I've been standing on a line waiting to get a pass, and you can't even pass me the ball correctly. So, I'm chasing it down the field. So, and that's at all levels. I mean, it's crazy. Right. Like, we call it the pretzel drill. So in hockey, you come out of the corner and you get an unrealistic pass from the person that's defending you. And then you go against them and defend them. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's counteractive to how you're going to play. But
it looks really cool on EA Sports, right?
It looks good. Well, it looks good, and the fact is, most of the kids can be successful at it because it's such a low skill warm up. Yeah. Like, so there's no effort involved. But the real warm up, and Greg brought it up, was the real warm up is engaging and battling and playing keep away and playing 2-on-1 and 1-on-1 and competing so that your competition is up. So when the puck drops for real, you're already at a heightened sense of competition. Right. And I think, and in hockey, it's even more crucial because in hockey, it's you're at it. Like the puck drops and you're going. Like in soccer, at least you can get a little like place in there where you could control the speed of the game much easier than you can in hockey. Correct. And so knowing that now that heightened sense of the ability to possess the ball and move the ball and retain the ball and then control the speed of the play, because you might only get one chance at shooting, is the similarities. That's like where you say, okay, well, let's just expand that out to the whole game. The more we possess it and the more we control it and the more we dictate the time of play, the better likelihood we're going to win, unless we got the Lee's kid in that or something. But I think other than that, we're in good shape. But I think that's where soccer and any sport, like that's such a crucial piece of going into the match, where we don't even teach our coaches how to warm up the kids properly so they're ready for the match.
Yeah, I think one of the more relevant comparisons in sport, really at any level, as far as like talking about, in hockey, it is the speed is so high all the time because the rink is small and the puck moves fast, and there's not a lot of space to take a breath and make decisions. Soccer, ironically, in my opinion, really resembles basketball more than other sports. When you do get into the more cerebral teams that moving it around the outside, and if it's not on, let's just back up, let's take a breath, wait for, the center forwards to have an opportunity, as opposed to like Harlem Globetrotters going crazy up the field, and there's soccer teams that do that too. I'm just going to circle back around though, because I think that all of this really involves a significant deficiency in parent education as it applies to the nuances of the games, and styles, because again, they're so hyper focused on little Johnny or Janie's, when they touch the ball, the puck, whatever it is, and what they do immediately, as opposed to all the things that occurred leading up to that point, or the things they need to do to recover in the event they do make the turnover or whatever, because they might have a great shot, but they're really shitty at getting back. It's and that doesn't help anybody in any sport. So the kids are fine. The issue is transferring, from qualified coaches and staffs they right now they're leapfrogging the parents, and I think parents should be more involved in some communication between these clubs and coaches, so that you can at least set a precedent. Like
but
this is
it's
our
crazy too,
expectation.
because I think that comes from, like, when I look at hockey, and then I look at, like, I do a lot of lacrosse, and lacrosse is very similar to that, where we stick like a brand new dad or mom into an environment of teaching, when that's the most crucial time to have a good teacher. Like that's the foundation. So and you know, you want to have fun, and everybody want to, you know, go around and jump around and grow, but if you don't understand the fundamentals of the game, and then you put, now all the parents on the sideline are just like you. Like, it's you and all the parents not knowing what you're doing, and you're just replicating, you know, what you see at the pro level, and you're not understanding the foundational level. That's where, you know, I know as a coach developer and somebody that works with coaches in education, that's the first person I want at the first entry level. Like that, that high level person, you could almost take that person and say, you know, I don't really care who that person is from 12 to 15, because at that point it's just a matter of more structure. But at 4 and 8, it's so important to have a great teacher with great enthusiasm and 100% of passion. And it can be a dad and mom. I'm not saying it can't be, but the overwhelming people are the volunteer mom and dad, because they're like, well, we don't have any money, we have no finances. We just got to get somebody out here to help, and let's just who's the most energetic to do that. And unfortunately, sometimes it's the worst person to do it.
Yeah. No, I've seen that many times.
Yeah, I was just say too, we always got to be careful at those youth levels, because that can make or break a coach or a kid, right? And, you know, I've been really blessed the last couple of years that last year's team and this year's team, we've just had great parents, right? We've had really great parents around. Like, all the parents are really close knit, and I am supremely aware of how fortunate I was to have that once, but to have it twice is almost a record. But, you know, one of the things we did on the team, JB, and I encourage coaches to do this, is get the parents on board from day one. One of the greatest things I heard a coach say last year to me was, and this is in the youth levels, the younger levels, is you win the parents over, you win the kids over. And at first I was a little taken aback, but, you know, I thought about it, and he's right. He's totally right, because no one can negate what you're teaching quicker than a parent. And to be fair, that trust needs to be there. This isn't a manipulation, right? These parents have to trust you with their kid. It's not always going to be perfect, but the more you can communicate with the parents in a way of, look, this is, as you said, JB, this is the why. This is why we're doing this. This is why it's important for your kids' skating development to take precedent over their ability to Michigan the puck into the air and fly it into the net, which is fun. I'll never tell a kid not to be creative, but there's a time and a place, right? And I think that you know, and again, I want you to comment on soccer. You know, is that something that soccer takes on as well? And we're seeing this a little bit more, I think, at least in my experience, Mike and Christy in hockey, of, you know, we need to get the parents somewhat involved a little more than it used to just be get them out of the way. Because the parents are so vocal nowadays, and with social media and the ability to communicate, you know, what used to be a rumbling now can become a fire very quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah, I think that to your point, excuse me, firsthand experience for me, you know, looking at other groups of parents that I wouldn't say idolize, but I look to as an example of where soccer parents in particular, and probably applies to any sport, within the region that we play in, you know, City SC, St. Louis's academy team. One of the teams we play regularly is Chicago Fire, and it's their academy under the MLS team. And the amazing thing about this team, and they are off the charts. I mean, the multiple kids in the national team pool. They are good. They're special. But when you look at the sidelines, I always joke with the other dads that are with me, and we pay attention to other parents. They're zip silent. They don't say a word. They're not yelling. They might get a little golf clap on a goal or whatever, something like that. But as we've traveled around and we look at these other super high level teams, there's an inverse relationship between the quality of the kids and the veracity of the parents. And the only thing I can attribute it to, because these clubs don't pull the parents in. They're not part of the process. The kids are communicated to directly. Parents' job, get them there and then stay out of the way. I think it's the parents become educated to the game. and they understand what's going on. And when they see the little Johnnies doing this, it's I don't know, some magic potion is making them quieter. And I'm like, oh my God, if we could figure out a way to somewhere in that process, these parents are understanding that yelling kick it and yelling at the ref and all these other insane things that have no intrinsic value, to their son, to their daughter, to the game. Got to get that stuff out. And that's what's happening. So it does exist. I think that the vast, so many kids though are in that middle world of they're competitive, they're good. Are they college quality? Maybe, maybe not. Can they play competitively in high school? Probably. That's where the majority of players are, right? So
yeah, but that's what I love. That's what I love about like what soccer did with like in our area with the silent Sundays, where you have a soccer game and everybody, nobody could say anything, and it wasn't really more, and nobody ever told a parent they couldn't cheer. Like it wasn't silent like you can't cheer. Although a lot of people took it as like, oh, I just got to sit on my hands and have my mimosa and just sit here. But I think it's just but I think a lot of it but it comes down to, JB, you bring up a great point, is but those parents that are engaged and brought into the fold and they're with their child, they understand that it's a process with their child, and the coach understands that the only way I can fulfill the process is for the parents to buy in, like because you have them more than me. But I want them to be more with me, So if I want them to be with me, I need you to be advocating for me, not against me. And the only way to do it, and I learned that the hard way. I certainly, as a young coach out of college, I just said, this is who I am. If you don't appreciate who I am, who the hell are you? You're nobody. What have you done? Like, I don't care. You could be the greatest accountant in the world and the best fireman in the country, but you've no way could you do what I do. But the problem is, you get to tell your kid that I suck all the time because I'm not with them. So so finding a way to get that parent in there and saying, yeah, I wasn't real happy with Coach Benelli's decision there, but you know what? I understand why he made it, because remember the conversation we all had last month about that? He said this was probably going to happen. And the greatest thing about being a coach is you can be, you can have a crystal ball. You could make your own agenda and your own, kind of end game by how you engage the parents and what you talk to them about. The same thing in soccer. I coached soccer for 5 years. I knew nothing about soccer. I knew I was a good soccer player, but I didn't really know the game. But at that level, when you're working with 8-year-olds, you don't know the game. You just have to have fun. You just have to be energetic, and you just have to communicate and say, this is why everyone's going to play. Well, we don't agree everyone should play. I understand that, but this is why I need to have everybody play. I'm the one coaching. Right. You need to understand what my feelings are about this, so that then we could be on the same team. And I think that really diffuses everyone, I think, because the one person that does step up, all the other parents what the hell's wrong with you? Just get on board here.
But the key is communication.
Well, we always come to that. I mean, every damn podcast is communication.
Yeah, but they fail so often. They don't let parents in on the grand scheme, on the big game plan, and which leaves parents frustrated, angry, second guessing, then thinking, "Oh, you're targeting my kid,"
right? Because
the coach isn't communicating. They're like, "Don't talk to me, parents." Well, that's fine. You don't want them to talk to you, but explain to them what you're thinking, what your philosophy is. It will erase a lot of the tension.
You got to drop some of the ego. You got to drop it. We're talking youth sports, by the way. I want to keep saying, and some collegiate sport. I think once you get to pro, it's a completely different deal, obviously.
Yeah, but it's not that different. It's not that different. That's the funny thing. When agents start interfering with pro athletes, it's the same thing. Right. It's like you see it all the time, and it comes down to, just let's all get in a room and communicate here. Let's just be in a situation where if you think your son is the best striker in the world, I don't. And this is why why they're so important in this role that they're playing. Because we've talked about, JB, we've had these conversations a lot on the show with anybody that's in a position like you're in, where sometimes you just got to cut bait and say, hey, you know what, it's not the right program for you, but I can't fight you because I need to help 18 other kids. And
Yeah,
you're not going to win every battle, right? But if you communicate more to the whole, you're going to keep more of the whole.
Yes.
Yeah, I think two quick points. One is, much similar to the corporate world, from a sales consulting standpoint. Yeah, I had a great mentor early in my career. He was like, seek the no, find the no, save yourself some time, right? And that simple premise, as it applies to kids, is let's figure out what's realistic. What is their trajectory? And I think in youth sports, soccer in particular, the teams that I've worked with, I see 2 time periods in which you have an opportunity to rein the parents in. One is around 6th grade, 7th grade, so that you can start to have the conversation as you're working with all the boys or all the kids, like, is your goal to play high school soccer? Okay. And if yes or no, and if yes, then let's work towards that. Okay. What high school, we know which ones are competitive and those that aren't. And let's kind of modify our goals for your son towards what you and him or her agree what you're looking for. And then you fast forward a couple of years, you get into that sophomore, junior high school time frame, much more difficult conversation. And this is where the parent ego comes into play. Do they want to play college?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a scholarship? Okay, so now we're getting into brass tacks, because we all know whether it's D3 to D1 and anything in between, or look, you're a club player, you're super smart, go get your engineering degree, play on weekends with buddies. Let's be honest about this. And that's a tough conversation. And frankly, I think the kids can have it easier than the parents, because the parents have preconceived notions as to what jersey they're going to be wearing, and not so much about what city or what degree they're going to be walking away with.
Right.
So kind of juggling that is tough.
Yeah, no, I watch all these guys on social media all day, and there's this one kid that's so funny, right? He imitates the parents, of what the parents say on the car ride home, and then my son always sends me these messages like, see, I'm like, I don't do that. He goes, yeah, you do that all the time. I go, I don't do that, but it comes down to like, do I do, like, what is your like, I don't perceive that at all, and I think when I dig into it, sometimes I'm like, no, you're not really like that, but I'm just saying you're like that. I mean, so it's. But it's just one of those things where you're like, well, where am I? What am I looking at? Like, what's my goal? And then what are you seeing from that?
Right.
Like, are you seeing that or not?
And JB, I wanted to tell you this story about soccer, what it's done for me. And, I'm always amazed at what other sports teach me. I always say golf taught me patience, and basketball taught me how to transition extremely fast. And, what soccer taught me as a parent, I remember I brought my daughter to soccer shots when she was young. And I was so relaxed. I was just so relaxed. And I'll tell you why. It's because I just don't know a ton about soccer, self-admitted, right? That's just not my number one sport. And I realized in that moment that I'm putting so much unneeded pressure kind of on myself, or intensity on myself at hockey, just because A, I know the game really well. B, I've played the game. And what soccer taught me in that moment is, why am I not feeling like this at my kids' hockey games? I'm usually a lot of anxiety might not be the right word, but I'm feeling a lot of intensity. And after that moment, I woke up to you can do this wherever you want, Lee. You're choosing to act like that. And there was a lesson there of, what you know or what you don't know can really affect how you approach something. Right. I'm very thankful for that moment of, wow, I really am relaxed here and not with my son. I think all sports can teach us different ways to learn, and I think that's why it's important to look to other sports and educate yourself, to participate in other sports. Same thing as eating. We always tell our kids, right, try different foods, and then when you know what you like, you know what you like. But I just think that the similarities between the two sports and many sports are brilliant. We have about a minute left. I just wanted to, sure. I really love that you're here, and the conversation is similar, right? I know, Mike, we can do a part 2 if you want. We'll do the Shark Tank episode.
A little home and away coming up, right?
I didn't even get into the defensive structure of soccer yet. That's what I was really hoping for. But.
Well, that's we'll get the 5 listeners that want that, and we'll get
the structure is don't allow a goal. That's the strategy.
Score more points.
Yeah.
Or like my kids coach, just kick it out of bounds. Don't try to do anything. Just kick it out of bounds. You're fine. Okay.
I love JB's, and I say this to the kids: if we get more goals than them, we have a chance. You know what I mean? But JB, we're out of time. And I just want to tell you, I really appreciate you coming on. I think the fact that the conversation flowed so smoothly shows the similarities between the two sports, especially in a town where they're both pretty prevalent. So thank you so much for coming on with us today. And
I appreciate being on.
Yeah, I'd love to do a part 2. I know we're going to kind of trade here, but I think this is a kind of conversation we want to have a few times a year, right, guys? Just to kind of make sure that we take ourselves out of the hockey rink a little bit, and remind ourselves that all parents are insanely crazy and all sports cost too much money. No, joking aside, it's really more of the common wonderful bonds that these sports create, that there are good people in all these sports, like JB, Christy, Mike, obviously yourselves included too, and we can move forward together. So again, Mike, Christy, do you have anything else you want to throw in before I close it?
I'm just saying, we'll talk again when Syracuse University, that's out of the Orange, wins that second national championship.
Well, just Google SLU National Championships, St. Louis University. And when your eyes get all blurry from all the trophies, I apologize. So congratulations on your win. I'm not a hater. It's all good.
Go Orange!
Yeah. Christy, always a proud graduate. Thanks, JB, so much. That's going to do it for this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Obviously, check out the Soccer Dad Pod. That's out there for you to listen to. We'll link it up with the episode. JB and his friends drinking beverages of their choice, I'll say, as they discuss.
Cold and yellow.
Yeah, there you go. And you can catch all of our episodes, obviously, at ourkidsplayhockey.com. Go there to check out some of the deals we have, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to give us those reviews. It helps us out a lot. So for Christy Casciano, Burns, Mike Manelli, and JB Anderson, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Have a great day, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.